In this episode, I want to walk you through a case study of an athlete that I helped go from playing with a lot of self-doubt to playing with confidence. I'm going to explain what was causing his self-doubt, and then I'm going to walk you through the game plan that we used to get him to develop more confidence in himself that has led to better performances. Hey there, I'm Eli Straw, a mental performance coach who works with athletes from around the world on building a stronger mental game. The athlete that I'm referring to in this case study is a high school quarterback in his senior year. Last season, he didn't start and he was beaten out by a player that was a year younger than him. The reason his coaches gave him as to why he didn't start was his mindset. They said he needed to develop confidence. That's why his parents reached out to me. So what we did first in the beginning of the program is we worked to identify why he was not believing in himself and where this self-doubt was coming from. And there were a few key reasons why this was happening. Reason number one was negative self-talk. He was experiencing a lot of negative thoughts about himself, especially going into practices, during practices, and then after he made mistakes. Another reason why he was doubting himself a lot and was struggling with confidence was comparison. And this is something that is really challenging whenever you're dealing with, kind of a fight for a starting position, which is what he's been dealing with since the beginning of last season. And it's been natural for him to compare himself to that other quarterback, even to compare himself to other quarterbacks from other teams, to quarterbacks he wants to be like. And all of this comparison led to him questioning how good he was and doubting himself as a result. And then another reason why he was struggling with this confidence was how he responded to mistakes. He was criticizing himself after mistakes. He was beating himself up during practices. If he did make a mistake in a game or in a scrimmage, he was getting down on himself. And all that did was lower his confidence going into the next play, into the next drill, whatever it was, right? His confidence was going down because of this comparison. And then the last reason that we identified as to why he was doubting himself was perfectionism. He was placing a tremendous amount of outcome expectations on himself. He expected himself to play perfectly, especially because he was dealing with this comparison and this fight for a starting role. That led to this idea that he couldn't make any mistakes in order to get that starting position. And when he was thinking that he couldn't make any mistakes, all that did was led to him playing tight and again, responding poorly to these mistakes. All of that culminated in this sense of doubt and the poor body language he had and the lack of confidence he played with. So what we did is we worked together in the very beginning of the program to create a game plan. And the game plan began with us working on performing cognitive restructuring. This is a technique that I love because what it does is it works to identify the negative thought patterns we have. And part of my philosophy and part of my approach to mental coaching is helping athletes understand the connection between the way they think and the way they feel and then ultimately the way they play. Because there's no way for us to get away from the fact that when we think a certain way, when we have this pattern of negative thinking, that will lead to self-doubt and that lowers our confidence. It leads to anxiety, all these different challenges. But when we're able to have positive thought patterns, and this goes beyond just, having raw positive thinking in the moment, it's really working to reframe and change the way we naturally think, change those natural and automatic thoughts that we have. What that's going to do is it's going to lead to belief. It lowers anxiety, lowers pressure, lowers fear, and it leads to better performances. So what this looked like is we created a self-talk routine first. And that's where we took these negative thoughts, we reframed them into positive thoughts, and then he began reviewing them every single day. And through this repetition, what ends up happening is we change and alter our natural thought patterns because our brains thrive off repetition. So the more he was reviewing and repeating and rewriting and reading back to himself these positive statements, the more that was working to rewire his natural thinking. But we didn't just stop there. What I then talked to him about was using reframing in the moment. So we've got this self-talk routine in place. He's reading it every day. But then when he was practicing, before practice, after mistakes, he worked on reframing his thinking, where if he noticed himself having a negative thought, he responded to that and reframed it in a better way. For example, if he was thinking, I'm never going to be able to be as good as that other quarterback, he would reframe it to, I know I'm a great player, just focus on my strengths and stay present. So we really worked on this subconscious level where we were using the self-talk routine to reframe his thinking, but then also on this conscious level where he was reframing his thoughts in the moment. The second thing that we did then is we worked on resetting his high expectations. So I was saying earlier that his high expectations, these outcome expectations, and that perfectionism was lowering his confidence because it was leading to tense and stressed and anxious play. So we identified all these different outcome expectations he has, and we worked to reframe them to controllable mini goals. And then we took that a step further and we identified 1 to 2 controllable goals or controllable targets that he needs to focus on when he's playing. He was doing better during practice at this point, but whenever he got into a scrimmage, because they were doing some early season scrimmages, he was still struggling with rushing. He was struggling with making good decisions because he was still anxious, still overthinking. So we figured out that before the snap, he needs to go through his progressions. That's the number one thing for him to do. And then he needs to focus on being as present as possible after that. So those were a couple controllable targets that we focused on. And what that helps us do when it comes to confidence is it helps us take our attention off of these different outcome, high expectations that we have where we're thinking, I have to make this play go perfectly. I can't make any mistakes right here. And we simplify it down to more attainable targets that are going to then lead to us having that success instead of having our minds just caught up, consumed by, and focusing on those different outcomes and those different results. And then the third thing that we worked on is we implemented a post-practice routine, which is something he's now using as a post-game routine. Whenever an athlete is dealing with confidence, it's critical for us to identify how are they responding to practices and games. Are they overthinking the mistakes, overanalyzing the mistakes, and criticizing themselves? That's what this quarterback was doing after practices. We want to make sure that after practices, we are reflecting on what we did well, because that is a key point to building confidence. So he started to reflect on what he did well after practices, and then he worked to reframe the mistakes that he made into lessons and learning opportunities. And what this has done over the course of weeks is it's helped him reframe his view of mistakes from negatives to learning experiences, which is taking a lot of stress off of those mistakes themselves while simultaneously building his confidence because he is reflecting on the positives. And then another thing that we did after that is we worked on using mindfulness to create a calmer mind. I am a firm believer that a calm mind will be a confident mind because a lot of times it's not this lack of confidence that we're dealing with as much as it's these anxious and fearful and negative thoughts that are overshadowing our confidence. And so for him, when he was overthinking the play, when he was overthinking what his coaches were thinking of him, when he was dwelling on mistakes, so his mind was racing and thinking about a bunch of different things, that kept him from being confident. Through the use of mindfulness, both mindfulness throughout the week, using mindfulness meditation, and then practicing mindfulness in the moment where he's working on just staying fully present in the moment, before plays, during plays, after plays, that's really helped him calm his mind and allow him to feel more settled, more composed, which has then also allowed him to feel more confident. And the last thing that we really focused on was using resetting tools in the moment when he did make mistakes. And his resetting tool is a simple thought-stopping phrase that he uses in the moment to tell himself to forget about that mistake. He uses some mindfulness breathing in the moment to reset, and then he refocuses on his controllable objectives for the next play or for the next drive. Because this has been a key point when it comes to him remaining confident throughout a game instead of having his confidence go up and down based on how he responds to these mistakes. So I wanted to share that case study with you so that you can, maybe take some ideas for yourself if you're currently struggling with confidence. Some really great news is that this quarterback is now playing the majority of the game. They were splitting time between him and the other quarterback at the beginning of the season for the first couple of games, but he's now the starter. He's playing really well. And it's because he's worked to change his mindset. He always had the physical skills, right? And his coaches even told him that in the beginning. They said, you have the physical skills, but what you're struggling with is the mindset that you need to succeed. He's now developed the mindset, and he is continuing to develop the mindset. So if you are currently struggling with confidence or any other mental game challenge and it's keeping you from performing your best, I've put a link in the description below to learn more about my one-on-one 12-week mental performance coaching program. I hope you enjoyed this case study. I want to say thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and I wish you the best of success in all that you do.